When both of you stop reaching out, when the messages stop coming, when the phone stops lighting up, the silence feels like a relief at first. It feels like control. It feels like peace. But soon that quiet turns heavy. It starts to echo. It starts to haunt. Because silence has a strange way of revealing what words were hiding. It makes you realize how much noise existed between you, how much confusion, how much reaching. And now that it's gone, the quiet isn't comfort. It's confrontation. It's the sound of two people too proud, too hurt, too scared to speak, pretending they've moved on, while secretly wondering if the other still thinks about them, still misses them, still feels that ache in the middle of the night. At first, both of you try to convince yourselves that this distance is good, that it's healthy, that it's time to move on. You tell yourself you're done chasing, done explaining, done giving, and maybe you mean it. Maybe you finally had enough. But then comes that one moment when you feel a sudden emptiness, a small ache that doesn't make sense. And it's because silence doesn't erase emotion. It magnifies it. It brings everything you tried to bury right back to the surface. You start remembering the last words spoken, the tone of their voice, the messages left unanswered. And it hits you. This isn't peace. It's just avoidance in disguise. It's the space where love and fear sit quietly, side by side, waiting to see which one wins. For the dismissive avoidant, that silence feels like control. They tell themselves they don't need you. They tell themselves they've finally escaped the pressure, the expectations, the emotional pull. They distract themselves. They dive into work, friends, noise, anything that keeps them from feeling. Because they're experts at numbing, they can live without contact, but they can't live without thinking. And that's the truth they hide. They think silence protects them, but it doesn't. It only delays the inevitable. Because the longer the silence lasts, the more real the loss becomes. And eventually that silence starts to sound like regret. It starts whispering reminders of what they threw away, the love they didn't know how to hold, the safety they didn't know how to keep. And even if they don't say it, they feel it. Deep down, quietly, painfully. For you, it's different. At first, the silence hurts like hell. It feels like rejection. It feels like being erased. It feels like punishment for caring too much. You check your phone. You wonder if they'll break first. You replay everything in your head, searching for meaning in their absence. But then something changes. Little by little, the silence that once felt unbearable starts to become familiar. You start realizing that the absence of their chaos is giving you space to breathe. You start sleeping better, thinking clearer. You start to feel your power return. Not the power to make them come back, but the power to let yourself go forward. The silence that once broke you becomes the silence that heals you. It teaches you that closure doesn't always come in words. Sometimes it comes in distance. But the truth is, silence doesn't stay still. It moves differently for both of you. For the dismissive avoidant, it starts as peace and turns into pain. For you, it starts as pain and turns into peace. And somewhere in the middle of that shift, the balance changes. The one who thought they didn't care starts to feel, and the one who felt too much starts to release. It's almost poetic, how the silence becomes the teacher, how it exposes who was pretending and who was genuine, how it shows that running doesn't heal, it only delays the lesson. And that lesson is simple. You can't avoid connection without avoiding yourself, and eventually, no matter how strong their walls are, they'll hear your absence louder than they ever heard your voice. You'll notice it when the quiet starts to feel less heavy for you and more haunting for them. When you finally stop checking your phone, but they start checking yours. When you finally start finding joy again, and they start losing sleep. Because silence changes meaning depending on what side of healing you're on. For you, silence becomes self-respect. It becomes peace. It becomes a boundary. But for them, silence becomes reflection, and it becomes guilt. It becomes the echo of all the love they pushed away. They'll try to fill it. They'll try to move on. But the problem is, you don't forget someone who touched your soul. You just learn to live without them. And that truth becomes the one thing they can't escape. They'll start to feel it in moments they can't control, like hearing your favorite song unexpectedly or seeing something that reminds them of you. They'll try to shake it off, but it stays because energy doesn't lie, and your energy still lingers in the spaces they thought they'd closed off. They might not reach out, but they'll think about it every day. They'll hover over your name, type a message and delete it, scroll through old photos, reread old texts, trying to convince themselves it doesn't matter anymore. But it does, because the silence that once gave them power now feels like punishment. It reminds them of everything they lost by not showing up, by choosing pride over vulnerability, by mistaking distance for strength. And for you, there's a moment when you finally stop waiting, you stop hoping they'll break the silence, you stop wondering if they miss you. And that moment is where everything changes, because that's the moment you realize silence isn't the end, it's transformation, it's growth. It's where you learn that sometimes love doesn't come back. It comes full circle, it teaches you what you needed to know, and then it lets you go. And when you both stop contacting each other, it doesn't mean the love disappears. Just means the chapter closes, and the silence that once hurt becomes the proof that you survived, that you healed, that you loved deeply and learned the hardest lesson of all, that not every connection is meant to be continued. Some are meant to be remembered. And the silence that remains isn't emptiness. It's the echo of everything that was real. They won't react right away. They'll look calm, composed, almost cold. They'll act like they've accepted everything, like they've already moved on. They'll even convince themselves that it doesn't bother them, that it's over, that the silence means nothing. But what they don't understand is that time doesn't heal what they've suppressed. It reveals it. The dismissive avoidant moves through life pretending they're unaffected, pretending that detachment is power. But it's not power. It's protection. It's the shield they use to keep themselves from feeling too deeply. They've trained themselves to believe that needing someone is weakness, that caring too much is dangerous. So when the silence begins, they don't break immediately. They distract themselves. They fill their days with work, noise, people, anything that keeps them from thinking about you. But what they don't realize is that avoidance doesn't make love disappear. It only buries it, and buried feelings always find a way to surface. In the beginning, they'll feel relief. They'll tell themselves that space is what they needed, that the distance feels peaceful, that being alone feels familiar, because that's what they've always done. Every time someone gets too close, they retreat. They convince themselves that solitude is safety, that emotional distance equals strength. But then something unexpected happens. Time starts doing its work, and silence. The very thing they used to find comfort in starts to feel different. It starts to feel like loss, like emptiness, like a reminder of everything they tried to suppress. They'll wake up one morning and realize it's been days since they've heard from you, and suddenly, the peace they thought they had starts to feel like punishment, because they're not used to missing people. But this time, they do, and it confuses them. It scares them. It reminds them that they cared far more than they ever admitted. They start noticing your absence in subtle ways, in moments that catch them off guard. A random song plays and it sounds like you. They see your favorite color somewhere and their chest tightens. They catch themselves thinking of something funny and instinctively wanting to tell you. And that's when it hits them. The connection didn't fade. It's still there, buried under all their denial, all their pride, all their walls. They'll replay your last conversation in their head. They'll remember the look in your eyes, the tone of your voice, and for the first time, it will hurt, not because of what you said, but because of what they didn't. Because silence doesn't protect them anymore. It exposes them. It forces them to feel what they've been avoiding, and that feeling grows heavier with each passing day until they can't hide from it anymore. They'll still pretend on the outside. They'll still look calm, still act composed, but inside, they're restless. They start asking questions they never asked before. They wonder if you're okay, if you've moved on, if you still think about them, and that curiosity turns into longing. It's subtle at first. It creeps in slowly, like a shadow they can't get rid of. They'll scroll through their phone at night, their thumb hovering over your name, debating whether to reach out, but fear stops them. Pride stops them. The same fear that made them run now keeps them quiet. They'll tell themselves that you don't care, that it's better this way, but their heart doesn't believe it. It's still looking for traces of you in everything. It's still holding on to the comfort your presence gave them, even if they never admitted it when you were there. Time becomes their mirror. It shows them what avoidance has cost them, because while they think silence makes them strong, it actually makes them lonely. And loneliness is a feeling they don't know how to manage. It creeps up on them when the distractions fade, when the noise quiets down, when there's nothing left to pretend about. That's when the memories flood back. They start missing your warmth, your understanding, your patience. They start realizing that what they lost wasn't attention, it was safety. You were the one person who made them feel seen without being judged. And now that you're gone, that absence becomes unbearable. They'll try to replace it, but they can't, because what you gave them wasn't replaceable. It was connection, and connection is something they don't know how to recreate once it's broken. They'll try to convince themselves that they're fine. They'll use logic to silence their emotions, but emotions don't respond to logic. They respond to truth. And the truth is, they miss you more than they can admit. They think about reaching out, about apologizing, about breaking the silence. But pride tells them not to. Pride tells them it's too late. And so they sit there, stuck between wanting to reach out and needing to stay detached. They'll go through their days functioning normally. But every quiet moment feels different now. It feels heavier because they can feel your absence in their energy, in their routine, in their soul. They thought they could live without you, but now they realize they were only surviving with you, and surviving doesn't feel like living anymore. For someone who's built their entire identity on being independent, feeling this kind of loss is overwhelming. They don't know how to process it. They don't know how to say, I miss you. They don't know how to admit they were wrong, because vulnerability feels like failure to them. So they hide it. They keep pretending they're fine. But every night before they sleep, they think about you. Every time they hear your name, their heart reacts before their mind can stop it. And though they won't show it, they feel it. All the regret, the guilt, the longing, the realization that the silence they thought would protect them has become the very thing that hurts them. Because now they can't go back to pretending they don't care. Now they know they do. And that truth changes everything. And maybe they'll never reach out. Maybe their pride will win again. Maybe their silence will last forever. But deep down, that silence will always remind them of you. Because real connections don't fade. They linger. They live in the spaces between thoughts, in the pauses between distractions, in the nights that feel too quiet. And for the dismissive avoidant who always believed they could walk away untouched, this is the moment they learn that love doesn't disappear just because you stop talking. It waits, it teaches, it humbles, and when all the distractions are gone, they'll finally face it. The truth they've been running from, the truth that they never stopped caring, they just didn't know how to show it. And by the time they realize that, the silence will already have said everything they were too afraid to say. You begin to heal, but they begin to remember. It's strange how silence affects two people so differently. You start off breaking, feeling the weight of every unanswered message, every unfinished sentence, every piece of closure you never got. While they start off calm, composed, pretending they don't care. But as time passes, your pain starts to soften, while theirs begins to grow, because you start releasing and they start replaying. You start letting go and they start holding on. You begin to understand that you can love someone deeply and still walk away when that love becomes too heavy to carry alone, while they begin to realize that they pushed away something that wasn't meant to hurt them, but to heal them. And that realization doesn't come all at once. It comes slowly, like a quiet storm building inside their chest, and by the time they notice it, it's already too late. You spend the first few weeks questioning everything, wondering if you mattered, wondering if they miss you, wondering if they ever felt the way you did. You replay the moments when things started slipping away. You search for signs. You go through old messages. You think about what you could have said differently. because that's what empaths do. You analyze, you internalize, you take responsibility even when it wasn't yours to carry. But eventually, something starts to shift. You look in the mirror and notice that your eyes look lighter, your heart feels calmer. You start remembering who you were before the chaos, before the overthinking, before the waiting, and that's when healing begins. Not with a big moment, but with small ones, with the decision to stop chasing understanding from someone who was never ready to give it. While you're doing that, they're starting to feel the emptiness they once craved. They told themselves silence meant freedom, but freedom without peace is just loneliness dressed up as control. They thought ignoring you would make them feel powerful, but now it just makes them feel disconnected. They thought moving on would be easy, but now every new connection feels shallow. Every conversation feels forced, because no one else sees them the way you did. No one else reads their energy without words. No one else understands their moods like you could, and that realization hits them when they least expect it. In the middle of the night, in the middle of a random song, in the middle of pretending they don't care, it's the moment they realize that losing you wasn't about losing a person, it was about losing the feeling of being understood. And that kind of loss lingers in ways that silence can't fix. You begin to grow stronger in your distance. You start creating a life where their presence is no longer needed to feel complete. You learn that peace doesn't come from having answers. It comes from accepting what can't be explained. You stop needing them to apologize, to understand, or to come back, because you've learned that your worth was never tied to their recognition of it. And while you rise, they start to sink into the memories. The same ones that used to mean nothing to them now start haunting them. They remember the way you looked at them when they couldn't look back, the way you cared when they couldn't reciprocate, the way you stayed even when they gave you every reason to walk away. And now that you finally have, their calm turns into confusion, their silence turns into regret. They're forced to face the truth that you were the one who actually cared. They'll try to distract themselves, they'll keep their schedule full, they'll talk to new people, they'll scroll mindlessly, they'll do anything to fill the void that your absence left. But it won't work, because connection can't be replaced by distraction. It can only be replaced by healing. And they're not ready to heal yet. They're still stuck in avoidance, still trying to pretend that silence is peace, but inside they're restless. Their thoughts are louder now. Their emotions start to leak through the cracks. They start feeling small things they thought they buried long ago. And that's how remembering begins, not as a choice, but as a reaction. A quiet ache that refuses to go away. A constant reminder that some people don't just pass through your life. They leave fingerprints on your soul, and you were one of them. You start moving forward, not because you've stopped loving them, but because you've started loving yourself more. You stop checking if they've noticed your absence. You stop hoping they'll come back. You stop trying to make sense of why they let you go. And instead, you focus on what you gain from letting them. You find strength in your stillness, clarity in your solitude, peace in your own company. And while you do that, they start to unravel quietly. They start questioning their own choices. They start realizing that what they thought was indifference was actually fear. Fear of losing control, fear of needing someone, fear of being seen. They'll scroll through your old photos, maybe smile, maybe hurt, but deep down, they'll know that what they lost was not replaceable, because what you gave them wasn't attention, it was understanding, and that's the rarest kind of love. Your silence becomes healing. Theirs becomes haunting. You use it to rebuild yourself. They use it to hide from themselves. You learn to forgive. They learn to regret. You start seeing the beauty in endings. They start feeling the weight of unfinished stories. It's not karma, it's consequence. Because when love is genuine, silence doesn't erase it. It just exposes who was ready for it and who wasn't. And while you move toward peace, they get stuck in reflection, constantly wondering if you've really let go, constantly fighting the urge to reach out, constantly regretting that they didn't fight for you when they had the chance. And that's when they begin to remember not just who you were to them, but who they were when they were with you, softer, calmer, more open. And that's when they realize that losing you wasn't losing someone else. It was losing a version of themselves they'll never get back. So you continue to heal. You continue to rise. You continue to live in the light that silence brought you. And they continue to remember, not because they choose to, but because they can't forget, they can't unfeel what was real. They can't undo the connection that woke something in them. And even if years pass, even if they never reach out, even if you never speak again, your energy will live in their memory as the one that got away. Not because you left too soon, but because they realized too late. And that's the cruel beauty of silence. It gives both people what they deserve. One finds peace, and the other finds truth. And sometimes, truth hurts more than goodbye ever could. This space between you becomes the lesson both of you were avoiding. It's the stillness that neither of you wanted to face. The quiet that forces truth to surface when communication stops, when all the noise fades, when there's no more chasing, no more explaining, no more trying to fix what's broken. That's when life starts teaching in silence. You both thought the distance would make things easier, but instead it became a mirror, showing everything that words couldn't, every fear, every insecurity, every hidden emotion. Silence becomes the teacher that neither of you asked for but both of you needed, because in the absence of words, actions, and contact, you begin to see what was real, what was illusion, and what was worth holding on to. For you, this silence becomes transformation. At first it hurts. The ache is constant. Your heart feels heavy. Your mind keeps wondering if they're thinking about you, if they miss you, if they'll come back. You catch yourself reaching for your phone, typing out a message you never send, replaying the past trying to make sense of it. But eventually the pain starts to shift. It starts to teach. It teaches you that love isn't about holding on to someone who won't reach back. It's about learning when to stop fighting for what's draining you. It teaches you that silence isn't rejection. It's redirection. It's the universe pulling you toward peace, even when it feels like loss. It's showing you that you were never meant to carry the weight of someone else's emotional unavailability. You were meant to learn what it feels like to put that weight down and stand taller. For them, silence feels like safety at first. It feels like control, like they've escaped the pressure, like they're free. They tell themselves they're fine. They convince themselves they needed this distance. They distract themselves with work, with people, with noise. But silence isn't fooled by distractions. It waits. And when the noise dies down, when the world goes still, it starts whispering. It whispers the things they don't want to hear. It reminds them of the connection they took for granted, the softness they pushed away, the care they didn't know how to receive. And slowly it begins to dawn on them that avoidance doesn't bring peace. It brings emptiness. And that emptiness becomes heavier with time. It starts as quiet comfort, but turns into a constant ache, the kind that keeps them up at night, the kind that no distraction can silence. The universe steps in when both people are silent, because that's when ego loses power. That's when clarity has room to breathe. It's in that space that you start to see things differently. You realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. You realize that the love you gave wasn't wasted. It was your truth. It was your proof that you're capable of something pure, something real. And that's what silence gives you perspective. It separates what's temporary from what's true. It shows you that even if love doesn't last, it can still transform you. It can still shape you into someone wiser, calmer, stronger. Because healing doesn't happen when someone apologizes. It happens when you stop needing them to. They start learning too. Though they'll never admit it, they start realizing that not reaching out doesn't erase emotion. It just postpones it. They start understanding that silence doesn't mean closure. It just means avoidance. And eventually, that avoidance becomes regret. They begin to see that real love doesn't disappear when you stop talking. It lingers, it stays in their energy, it visits their dreams, it sneaks into their thoughts, it follows them in every face they try to love after you. They'll meet new people, they'll have new conversations, but nothing will feel the same because you were never just a chapter, you were a turning point. And silence makes that clear. It reminds them of what authenticity feels like, of what connection truly meant, And no matter how hard they try to move on, something in them will always miss the peace that your presence brought. You start to see that the silence wasn't punishment, it was protection. It was the universe saying, "You've learned enough through pain, now it's time to learn through peace." You stop checking for messages that never come. You stop expecting closure from someone who's still running from themselves. You begin to realize that closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you deciding that your peace matters more than their confusion. And that shift is powerful. It's the moment you stop waiting and start living. It's the moment silence stops being the sound of loss and becomes the sound of freedom. It's when you understand that sometimes love doesn't return, it transforms into wisdom, into strength, into gratitude. And that's enough. Meanwhile, they begin to remember, they begin to reflect, they start replaying everything, wondering if they should have reached out, wondering if it's too late, wondering if they've finally pushed away the one person who actually cared. And those thoughts don't come as punishment. They come as awareness. Awareness of what their fear cost them. Awareness of the connection they didn't nurture. Awareness of the love they didn't understand. The silence that once gave them control now feels like consequence. And they'll realize that avoidance may protect your pride, but it also destroys your peace. Because no matter how much they try to deny it, love leaves energy behind. And that energy doesn't fade just because you stop talking. It lingers. It waits. It teaches. So when both of you stop contacting each other, something powerful happens. Not immediately, but slowly, quietly. It becomes the turning point. It becomes the healing. It becomes the lesson. For you, it's learning that you can love and still let go. That silence isn't the enemy. It's the space where you rebuild. It's where you meet yourself again after being lost in someone else. For them, it's realizing that silence doesn't erase connection. It only exposes how real it was. It's where they finally understand that the absence of love doesn't mean its end. It means it's waiting for courage, and when that courage doesn't come, it turns into regret. But either way, the silence between you changes both of you. It reshapes in your hearts, it rewires your minds, and it leaves a mark that no words could. Because silence, when it's real, doesn't just end a story, it rewrites it.